It is Thursday, June 27th. You're watching Our Two Cents. Chris and Gerry coming at you right now. Gerry, we have got a great one to talk about tonight. We're going to start, of course, with the big news, the Florida Panthers, Game 7. How can you not be thrilled with how this went down? Every person in the country, unless you're a Flames fan, was all aboard the Oilers bandwagon, coming down from a 3-0 deficit to tie this series up, going into Game 7. Florida comes away with a 2-1 win in what was arguably a very back-and-forth game. Edmonton had plenty of opportunity to tie this thing up. Good on the Florida Panthers for, breaking down in front of Sergei Bobrovsky. They weren't letting anything through. It was an exciting game. I think my favorite part of the whole game, Gerry, was that the officials let them play.
Oh, yeah.
I loved every minute of that. There was one penalty aside, I think, either way. But overall, hearing it right from your mouth, I want to know, what were your thoughts on the game? I mean, it was a little sad to see the Oilers, not pull off that history mark since the 42 Maple Leafs beat the Red Wings back coming down 3-0. But overall, did you like the series? Did you like the game? What were your gripes about it? What did you love about it?
Well, the series, of course, starts with unpredictability. I had no idea that Florida could jump out to a 3-0 lead. And again, if you watch the games, Edmonton played very well. Could have won one or two of those as well, especially the ones in Florida. But it was going into the game last night, and Florida had yet in the playoffs faced a game where they faced elimination. This was the first time, and they kept talking about Edmonton's 5-0 in elimination games. Well, Florida had never been involved in one yet because they had done such a great job throughout the playoffs to get to where they were. And so here it was, a Game 7 for the Stanley Cup. They're playing their first elimination game. And I said, when Edmonton was down 3-0, they could throw caution to the wind. They won Game 4 8-1. Caution to the wind. We got nothing to lose going to Florida. Let's win another one. They come back home, and with the propulsion of the hometown fans and the momentum again, they won that one. But now they were in a Game 7 where one mistake can cost you the whole thing. Before all that, Chris, it was caution to the wind. Let's just roll the dice and see what happens. And it rolled up very well for them. As they were very successful at everything they were doing. But now I was thinking, going into a Game 7, everybody's got to be a little bit more careful, because one little mistake will cost you the cup. Both teams played very well, even though, Chris, I didn't think the winning goal was one that will be memorable in regards to Skinner could have had it type of thing. And then there's some mad scrambles. Yes, he should have. And it could have been an overtime type of game. I was thinking 3-2, but it could have been a 2-1 and could have gone into overtime because neither team was giving up very much. But over, the final, I thought we were going to have a 5-game series just like they did in the NBA. But no, the Oilers made it just special as could be. But is there a God in the world, Chris, that doesn't let Connor McDavid win? Let them set a record from coming back 0-3, giving Canada their first Stanley Cup in over 30 years. Is there not a God that can create a hockey God that could have helped the Edmonton Oilers in game number 7? That is cruel. It's really cruel.
You're not wrong. And the wild thing I found about this game too, and talking about Connor McDavid, was he had two great opportunities to tie this game up late. And one of them came off a backdoor tip. I think it was from Evan Bouchard, who fired it in, hit the blade of McDavid, who had a wide open net and put it up high. The second one was an absolute beautiful stick check on McDavid when he had Bobrovsky beat, went backhand, forehand at a wide open cage, just couldn't bury it. Overall, you can't be disappointed with you'd be disappointed with the ending, but you can't be disappointed with how the Oilers played. They had every opportunity to capitalize on this. I think the numbers that I keep looking at, which were still so remarkable, was if you look at the penalty kill of the Edmonton Oilers throughout the entire season, like the entire playoff run they had, they were leaps and bounds, probably going to set records with how great they killed penalties. But I think Florida was 1 for 19 or 1 for 20 overall in regards to penalty kills and power plays. It was phenomenal to see Edmonton do what they did. Now, again, as unfortunate as the result was, I do agree with you. I pegged a 1-goal game. I would have bet a 1-goal game. It could have gone to overtime either way. In my heart of hearts, I had Zach Hyman scoring in overtime, so I could, rub it in as many Leafs fans' faces as I could possibly find. But the question I have to ask myself moving forward is, was this the best chance for this version of the Oilers, or will they have, or can they do what the Panthers did? What do they have to do? Because we've talked about this year after year about the Edmonton Oilers, Gerry, and that is Connor McDavid wants to win a cup. He was there. He was within a goal of tying this thing up to hoist the cup in Game 7. What moves do the Oilers have to make? Now, they've got some big decisions to make.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Well, I can't not to be specific, but I remember what Paul Maurice had said at the end of the game about losing last year, and some of the players that were there, the Stahl brothers, and some other players that were there they were thinking of on that particular night, and how their roster changed. It has to change, and
Right.
they did do it. I thought he said 9 players changed over between the team last year that went to the final and the team this year that went to the final. And then they add, Tarasenko and a Poso there at the trade deadline for depth. And doesn't Tarasenko win his second cup as he did so with St. Louis? And wasn't he a valuable
Right.
asset in the whole
Huge.
scheme of things?
Huge.
But it's just it's such a fine line. And to say Edmonton has to do this or that, you can't. Goaltending was always the problem during the regular season. Well, that stabilized, got you all the way to the playoffs. There was no lucky feat for them to get there. They worked hard just as much as the Florida Panthers do. They were through some worthy opponents to get there. So, yeah, what can they do? Who knows? But they did discover they have a good third line, and Connor Brown all of a sudden became effective, and Adam Henrique all of a sudden became effective, and Landmark or Lenmark or
Yanmark is
Yanmark
unbelievable.
all of a sudden
Yeah.
became a world beat. They had a great third line. They never had that during the regular season. Those are the kind of things that you discover as the playoffs go along. You got to have a third line to win, and Edmonton developed one, and it worked out just fine.
You're absolutely right. But let's talk about the first possible second line for a minute, because you talk we discussed how great the third line was in individual accolades. One guy who seemed, noticeably absent in the Stanley Cup final was Leon Draisaitl. And I'm not taking away, he had a great game
Mm-hmm.
6. But this is one of the decisions we were talking about. Of the following three scenarios, which is the most likely for Draisaitl in your opinion? You play out next year, becomes a free agent. Does he extend this offseason? Do the Oilers possibly fathom looking at trading Leon Draisaitl? I can't see that scenario being in play right now. But there's a lot of options here, and there's a lot of money tied up in Leon. And do the Oilers get there without Leon? Arguably, no. But this is
No.
Connor's team. It's a 1-2
Yeah.
punch. Who knows? But there's a lot of choices here.
Yeah, he just seemed a little off. His skating and his passing and whatever the case may be, he just didn't seem on. And he was certainly heartbroken by the loss. But he is a guy that the I don't think the Edmonton Oilers can let get away. I think whatever they have to do to keep him, they need to. I mean, Chris, here it is. What, the last 3 or 4 years, him and Connor McDavid in the top 3 or 4 in scoring, and either leading in scoring or even Draisaitl himself, but right there with Connor McDavid. That's not a guy that grows on trees. If you have him in your camp, you keep him in your camp and do whatever you
You
can.
figure
I
it out.
can't see why he wouldn't be happy being there. The fans are right into it. It's a hockey town. Why not? Why would he want to go anywhere else? Unless, of course, money persuades him to go somewhere else if he wants to try free agency. But I think he likes being there in Edmonton, and hopefully he will stay there.
Don't forget, this team started out like 5-12 or something like that. Like, they
Yeah,
weren't hot to start
yeah.
the season either, right? So I mean, my hat goes off to the Edmonton Oilers. But now let's talk about Florida for a minute. And I'm not just talking about the Panthers. I'm talking about the state, because the Lightning went
Hmm.
on their mini dynasty for a little bit, and now you look at the Panthers made the moves they had to make. Now there's a lot more speculation, and of course, I know it's all over the media at this point. And you ask yourself, hey, players go down to Florida because there's no taxes. So yes, everyone wants to play down there. The weather's
Yeah.
nice. How do they fix this? And I'm not taking away from the talent they had, but they have an advantage. So now my question is it luck, or is it, not without circumventing the cap, because that's not a thing right now, because they're playing by the rules. But should
Right.
those rules change?
Chris, here you had two good teams going toe to toe, and they both had depth. They both had good defense. They up and down the lineup, you could see that uh, both teams were worthy being there on paper for what the lineups that they had.
Right.
Does
Yep.
Florida have an advantage with acquiring free agents and stuff like that because of the tax thing? I really don't know. But in Tampa Bay's case, you look at Tampa Bay Lightning, they always built their team from within. They always had
From the
players. If they were
draft.
going to lose a great third line guy that was going to go play in Toronto and only last there a year and go somewhere else, that's classic. Toronto thinks they can make a third line player from Tampa Bay be a first line player on their team. Tampa Bay just developed, say, okay, that guy, we can't afford to keep him. We'll just bring somebody up from the minors and away we go. I think Florida's doing it a little bit differently, but they've been very astute in the players that they've acquired, either in trades or in free agency. But Bobrovsky, I wanted to talk about him for a second, Chris, in regards
Sure.
to the possibility of him being the Conn Smythe Trophy winner. He had a bad stretch in the finals, 3 games. I looked through
That's it.
his playoff resume this season. He had a stumble in almost every series where he had a bad goals against save percentage. It might have won the game or might have lost the game, but still. Connor McDavid is the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, and God bless him with the points that he had and the records that he almost set. But here in Game 6 and Game 7, he had no points. He had no points in Game 6 or Game 7. Worthy for the Conn Smythe, but you're really kind of snubbing Bobrovsky, who in my mind would have been the Florida Conn Smythe Trophy winner. He did stumble in the finals. He's in the nets for Game 7 and allowed just 1 goal on 25 shots. How can you overlook him?
I'm really glad you brought this up because I've looked at this over and over. And of course, the headline is going to read Connor McDavid does not come out to the ice to accept the Conn Smythe Trophy.
Mm-hmm.
Forget that just for a minute because I do agree with you. I think Sergei Bobrovsky was an absolute worthy candidate to receive the Conn Smythe. However, I don't disagree with Connor McDavid receiving the Conn Smythe.
No,
He
I
did
don't.
break. And I get what you're saying, and it could have gone either way because that would have been my argument on the Florida side. The only argument you could make on the Florida side would have been Sergei Bobrovsky. However, looking at statistically speaking what Connor McDavid has done, you look at the records he almost broke, but then there is a record he did break, and that was the assist record in the playoffs. That record was broken. He now holds that. Now, a lot of those assists went to Zach Hyman, who became basically the all-time goal-scoring leader in the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I would have almost made an argument to have Zach Hyman win that, but I think a lot of Zach Hyman's goals were just being in the right place at the right time. But yes, no, I agree with you, Gerry. I think if it was not going to be Connor McDavid, no, there's no other choice. It had to be Sergei Bobrovsky. But I am happy for Sergei. I'm happy for every. The only guy I'm not overly thrilled for is Matthew Tkachuk, and that's just because I think he's a donkey.
Well, he had a classic line though. He said to
Oh,
all my Calgary
yes,
fans,
yes, he did.
that was a great line. We didn't let Edmonton win. But the other fella in the post game that I really enjoyed, Paul Maurice, it was the coach of my Winnipeg Jets, the Winnipeg Jets, who I followed very closely, and his press conferences were always bang on. We're talking about Paul Maurice right down on the ice immediately after the game, not only talking to ESPN but talking to Sportsnet, talking to CBC, and he comes up with these zingers like,
Yes.
yeah, we needed to lose 3 in the final to learn how to win 4. And he said, it's not easy. It's so hard. It makes it so special. And that was right from his heart and referred to his parents and his brothers and sisters and where everything started for him, and even referenced the Winnipeg Jets and how much he enjoyed the time there and gave them, hopes for them to feel like this and win a Stanley Cup. But Paul Maurice is a gem, and they were very happy for him. It's his very first Stanley Cup as a coach. And the players up and down the lineup said how much they wanted to win it for him as well as themselves, but how much it was going to mean to Paul Maurice.
I love Paul Maurice. He's the greatest media coach you could ever ask for, and he'll give you those one-liners and those zingers all day, all night.
Yeah,
Happy to see him
and
with that.
profanity,
Uh,
and profanity.
well, that's the best part. Last thing I want to talk about the NHL quickly, and this is just a quick mention, is the fact that the Hall of Fame nominees came out today, or the inductees, excuse me, and there was a few names on there that's not surprising, but there was one name that kind of shocked me. For some reason, I always assumed he was in. To be noted, we're talking Jeremy Roenick. For some reason, thought he was already there. Pavel Datsuk, first opportunity, first ballot, no question. Shea Weber, same thing. Kudos to those guys there. But again, I'm stunned to know that Jeremy Roenick is just getting in now.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. Don't and again, he's one of those high-profile American type of players that should be
Right.
acknowledged as for his accolades and or his things that he accomplished throughout his career. You know, over 1,200 points. I mean, that's not to be sneezed at. 1,200 points is 1,200 points.
Jeremy Roenick also was the reason for one of the greatest NHL sound bites of all time from our good buddy Patrick Waugh saying, I couldn't hear what Jeremy was saying because I had my 2 Stanley Cup ring plug in my ear.
Right. Yes.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Major League Baseball, and I want to talk about the Blue Jays specifically because if we're talking about the Toronto Blue Jays, let's look at the reality. Bo hurt, Varsho hurt, Springer declining very fast. All the pitchers except Bassett underperforming. Or Elvis Martinez suspended 80 games. Is it time for Jays fans to panic, Gerry? I mean, what is going on in
Panic
Toronto right
over what, Chris? What are they panicking
now? Yeah,
over? Did they
fair.
actually think something was going to happen this season
They
after
did.
nothing happened
They
in
did.
the off season? What did they think was going
Jays
to happen?
fans.
Here we're almost
How
halfway
Shapiro and
through,
Atkins have a
Chris.
job is stunning.
They're halfway through the season, and here they are in the cellar of the American League East. And it doesn't get any easier. They got Boston the rest of this week, and then they've got the Yankees, and it just gets worse. Then that finishes off the month of June. So here they are as of 7-game losing streak, could be more by now. It's just really hard to watch and I didn't have expectations going into the season, so I'm not disappointed, and I'll just carry on tuning them in whenever I'm bored.
No, that's great. I mean, plus don't forget Houston's been on fire of late as well, and I mean it's going to get a whole lot worse before it gets better for Toronto Blue Jays fans. But as I was kind of, you know, you look at the top down, and the biggest thing that I go back to one of the shows we recorded, and that was Shapiro and Atkins talking about how they were really going to rely on the talent they had. They didn't feel they needed to add during
Yeah.
free agency, and I'm just nobody bought that. Everybody, like Jays fans, are getting disgusted at this point because before the season started, before free agency, there was a small window where Jays fans were still quite hopeful. But either way, we'll figure it out. But on the flip
But
side, let's
Chris,
talk about a little positive. Go ahead, go.
yeah, just one thing, and I love the haircut that
Yeah,
Vladdy has, and I looked up Vladdy's numbers today. You know now he's now
looking
batting
slim.
he's batting 286. He's batting
Yep.
286. I was referring. I was thinking to myself before the show. There's no player on the Blue Jays over 300. That's true. But you know what? The leading batting average in the Major League Baseball is Shohei Ohtani at 318. 318. So here's Vladdy trying to do what he can do. I love the new haircut. 286. I'll tip my hat to that.
Got to talk quickly about the Red Sox, though, because they have been a bit surprising. I think they're 8 games above 500. I will
Yeah.
speak on the behalf and die on the sword of all Red Sox fans and tell everybody to just calm down. The Red Sox are overachieving at this point. Don't think this is a sign for Red Sox ownership and management to start diving all in and start building this team. We're not making the postseason. We weren't supposed to make the postseason. I will say that I think Alex Cora is one of the best managers in all of Major League Baseball right now. But if you look at, Justin Turner gone, I'm making some of the moves that they had guys clear out, but this roster is putting things together. They're figuring out how to win right now. Build off this. Let this Red Sox team, because the Yankees are going to keep getting better and better every year. That Red Sox-Yankees rivalry is going to be alive and well
Yeah.
for a long time, and it's just a matter of time before all that happens. So overall, like I said, even though we're about 8 games above 500, I think it's important to say, hey, you know what? They are third in the American League East right now. They're going to come back down to earth here very shortly, Gerry. So everybody who's a Major League Baseball fan or a Red Sox fan for that matter, don't sit on your high horse just yet. But overall, it's been fun to watch baseball at this point. This has been a lot of fun. Let's go to the Atlantic scene and let's go to our 2 cents.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's another edition of the Atlantic Scene, and it starts on the baseball diamond. The Brunswick Senior Baseball League keeps trudging along. They're trying to get more games in as we've had some wild weather, wet weather here in the last little bit in and around New Brunswick. Fredericton still sits on top at 7-5 with Charlottetown at 8-6. Here's the interesting thing. Fredericton's played 12 games. Charlottetown's played 14 games. The Moncton Mets, who are in third, they're 5-5. They played 10 games. St. John's played 10 at 4-6. And Chatham sits in the cellar mainly because they probably haven't played enough games. They've only played 8. They're 3-5. They had 2 games last week, rained out. So they'll try to get some in this week. My games of the week this week in the New Brunswick Senior Baseball League. Moncton plays in Fredericton Friday night on Royals Field and on the hill at Royals Field at 7:30. And then the Mets are going to be home hosting Chatham on Sunday afternoon. That'll be at 4 o'clock at the Kiwanis Park. At the Brunswick Junior Baseball League, call it U22. St. John Junior Alpine sit on top at 8-4. Fredericton's next at 5-5. Chatham's at 5-6. The Moncton Mudcats are 3-6. Games of the week, they both happen tonight in the league, as Chatham is in Moncton at 7:30 at Kiwanis, and St. John plays in Fredericton at Royals Field. That's at 7:30. The MWBA concluded their season this past weekend, and for the second straight time, it's the Halifax Thunder winning the championship, and they do so undefeated. As a matter of fact, in the last 2 seasons, they have not lost a game. They won the championship game over Lake City, which is out of Dartmouth. It's the Lake City 59ers, and it was 90-57. Really wasn't a full-fledged battle. That happened at Dalhousie University, where the final took place. They're undefeated in the last 2 years. They win the Proline Stadium Legacy Cup for the MWBA supremacy. Halifax won over Port City, the Fog of St. John in the semifinals. And Lake City took care of Fredericton with a buzzer beater, beat the Freeze. The Freeze do win third place as they beat the Fog in the Constellation, third place at 70-55, and they take home third place in the league. Congratulations to all the women on a terrific season, and again, a job well done. And the NFL wrapped up their season right here on Rogers TV last Saturday, and it was a nail-biter. It was a wide-open affair and got in front of a good crowd at Rocky Stone. 43-42, the Nova Scotia Buccaneers again win over the Moncton Mustangs. Mustangs tie the game late, decide to go for 2 points instead of the convert, and it backfires. They fall 43-42. Congratulations to the Nova Scotia Buccaneers, the MFL champions again this season in 2024. That's your Atlantic Scene. Chris, now we want to know your 2 cents.
Before I get into my 2 cents, I just want to talk about the atmosphere at that MFL game, Gerry. I can tell you it was wild. I was there seeing the crowd and everything was going on. Again, heartbreaking loss for the Moncton Mustangs at home to the same team who beat them on a fadeaway 360 Hail Mary after a roughing the passer call last year as well. Just heartbreaking, but overall, good to see the fan support was there. You got to feel for the Moncton Mustangs on this, but kudos goes to the Nova Scotia Buccaneers on their back-to-back championship wins. Overall, it was great. Now, as far as my 2 cents goes, the question came up, Gerry, and I know as much as you love to hear me talk about the Habs and everything about them, is that Matvei Michkov, the number 7th overall pick for the Philadelphia Flyers, looks like he is going to be coming into the league 2 years earlier. That was the speculation, was should the Habs have taken Michkov at 5? They took Reinbacher. Michkov goes to Philadelphia at 7. Well, now that he's coming over 2 years earlier, all signs point to he'll be here this year. Michkov is an absolutely offensive talent. I think on loan with HK Sochi on loan from Scott St. Petersburg. In 47 games, he put up 41 points this year. Again, as an 18-year-old, watching him come on through. Now, why that doesn't bother me as a Habs fan, nor do I think Habs fans should be upset about this, is that their blue line will be stacked for years to come. Although our producer Jason does not seem to think so, what I can tell you about Reinbacher is he will likely start the season in Laval, which is fine with me because the Montreal Canadiens are nowhere even close to competing for his Stanley Cup. So for this, I let him go to Laval, let Michkov come into the NHL. I don't think it's any reason to stress. The big frame of David Reinbacher, the minute he gets a chance to take out Matvey Michkov, don't think for 2 seconds he's not going to rub him out to the boards. Habs fans have every reason to be excited. There's nothing to panic about. I welcome Michkov to the league. Good for him to be there. That's my 2 cents. Habs fans, don't panic. We made the right call. Gerry, hit me with your 2 cents before we close this thing and send everybody home.
Well, of course, the last week of hockey, Chris, my 2 cents circles, or focuses rather, on hockey. And more specifically, what happened after the game for the Stanley Cup the other night in Florida. As usual, the NHL does it right in regards to the presentation of the cup. The presentation of the cup does not go to the owners, it goes to the players. You've seen it many times in the Super Bowl, Major League Baseball, NBA. The commissioners cherish the owners, and it's the owners that get acknowledged first, and it's the owners who get to touch the cup or trophy first. Well, not in the NHL. The NHL, Bettman comes out and hands it to the captain, and then the celebration begins. It's the blood, sweat, and tears of the players that make it successful. They're the ones that everything's riding on their backs, and they're the ones that should be carrying the cup first and be acknowledged first. One thing the NHL could do a little bit better, and maybe they did, but I never heard it. Have an in house presentation where you do get an opportunity to have the players come up and say something to the crowd in a PA, over the PA, that everybody gets to hear it. And yes, did you notice the coach? He didn't get, Paul Maurice, didn't get the cup till very late. And I don't even know if the owner, if I ever even saw him hoist the cup. It's not the same in hockey as it is with the other major sports. And maybe hockey could take something away from the other three about the presentation and the acknowledgement of the players getting to talk to the audience. Maybe they could do that better. But to have a commentator up there, and the first thing they do, especially in the NFL, and they hand it to the owner and the head coach rather than the players. The players are doing all the work, and the NHL has it right. Give it to the captain. Let them go celebrate as a team. They're the ones that did it on the ice. Let them handle the rewards from the championship first. That is my 2 cents. For Chris, I'm Gerry. Hope you enjoyed the show this week. We'll see you.